To be what I am to the fullest, black to the fullest, a musician to the fullest, and a homosexual to the fullest.
Julius Eastman died a homeless, alcoholic crack addict. He was 49 years old. But before that, he wrote some of the most profound and powerful pieces of chamber music ever written. Eastman's music transcended conventional norms, foreshadowed the fusion of pop and classical music, and innovated a lot of the structured improvisational techniques that are used widely in contemporary circles. His music is often categorized as post-minimalist, but Eastman wasn't just influenced by minimalism, he expanded it. Where composers like Steve Reich and Philip Glass were focused on the process and purity of minimalism, Eastman injected it with a raw social commentary, political subversion, queerness, and black identity. Julius Eastman might be the single most important composer of the 20th century, but you probably never heard of him.
Part 1. The person.
No amount of biographical information can really convey the essence of who Julius Eastman was. As someone whose music was so focused on the human condition, particularly his own, it would be a disservice to Eastman's legacy to even try to explain the complexity of his personhood. I truly believe that the best way to experience and understand Eastman as a composer is to listen to his album Unjust Malaise. Full disclosure, it's not an easy listen. With pieces like If You're So Smart, Why Aren't You Rich, which is basically just a trumpet starting at the lowest note and then slowly going up the chromatic scale until it gets to its highest note, and at which point you can hear the performer like struggling. Like, dude, oh my god.
Are they struggling?
I love this particular piece because it's so thematic of Eastman's approach. The trumpet is Eastman, and the world around him is the rest of the ensemble. There's a clear distinction between the two entities, and they're at profound odds. The whole album exists in this kind of liminal space that teeters between serene spiritual awakening and the darkest depths of the uncanny valley. Shit's crazy. Like,
buku wild.
A few key points to remember about Julius Eastman. He was born in 1940 in upstate New York. He studied at one of the most prestigious music schools in the world. He was a piano prodigy, a Grammy-nominated vocalist, an academic, a philosopher, a social activist. He even played in this like avant-garde disco band called Dinosaur L. And he was gay. Like, super gay. He was a total diva queen with a big ego, but he had the charisma and raw talent to back it up. He would show up to rehearsals wearing leather chaps and chains, drinking scotch at 10 o'clock in the morning. He would like paint his face silver and then pop out from behind the piano. Literally start undressing people on stage. And while being gay in the art scene of New York in the 1960s isn't exactly unheard of, it's important to keep historical context in mind when talking about movements within art. The social and political climate in mid-20th century America wasn't the most forgiving when it came to people who were perceived as living on the fringes of society. And Julius Eastman, by all accounts, was definitely somebody who would fall into that category.
Part 2. Historical context.
It's pretty well established that the 20th century, particularly post-war mid-century, is where Western classical music saw an absolute explosion of stylistic exploration. Composers and musicians really started challenging the ideas of what constitutes as art and music. We get 12-tone serialism, polystylism, neo-romanticism, minimalism, maximalism, chance music, danger music, sound mass music, early electronic music, modernism, postmodernism, neo-postmodernism, neo-postmodernism. You know, the hodgepodge of all kinds of experimental avant-garde shenanigans. The prevailing theme here is innovation, right? Who's creating the most original, fresh, and daring music that people are going to talk about in fucking history books or whatever? The art world was ready for the next leaders of the upcoming generation of composers. The world was in a state of artistic flux after the devastating effects of World War II. Art was in sort of this trauma response after witnessing the unprecedented global tragedy. Poets in the streets, painters in the alleys, far and wide the people cried, "Who among you shall champion the aesthetic that will influence the tapestry of music to come?" Well, by all observable accounts, there's a clear victor in this musical arms race. And it was the minimalist. It's minimalism. Minimalism won. Pack up and go home, everybody. I don't care what anyone says. Minimalism has absolutely infiltrated and fused with the current music and pop culture.
This would take a whole video in itself to even begin to tap into.
But basically everything from EDM to movie soundtracks to heavy metal, easy listening, TV show title themes, Minimalism and its offspring have truly influenced and shaped most facets of music today. So what exactly is minimalism?
Part 3. Minimalism.
Now, there are some discrepancies as to what constitutes as minimalism, in the sense that there being two different approaches to the aesthetic. There's minimalism and there's minimalist music. Minimalism is the repetitive music like that of Philip Glass and John Adams. Musical ideas are stated then restated with subtle changes occurring throughout. Generally, this music is kind of hypnotic, it's a little vibey, relatively tonal, and overall accessible. In terms of contemporary classical music, this is the stuff you could show to an average person and they might be like,
"Oh, wait, I actually kind of like this. It doesn't sound like an oral housecape of demented brain rot."
which, you know, is the stuff that I kind of like. And then there's minimal music, like that of John Cage and Morton Feldman. This music was more focused on using as little as possible in terms of material and content, which, to be fair, is also actually pretty interesting and cool. But generally speaking, people aren't going to sit down and watch somebody playing a cactus with a feather.
It's been said that listening to John Cage's music is like chewing sand.
I think this is a relevant distinction between the two because it suggests that there was an established discourse happening in the sphere of avant-garde music as it pertains to relevance. So when it comes to minimalism, there's some common names that appear in music history textbooks. Think Terry Riley, Philip Glass, Steve Reich, Lamont Young, John Adams, maybe Michael Nyman, and if you're feeling a little froggy, throw in some Arvo Pärt. I love me some Arvo Pärt. These are the names that you are going to see. These are the composers that teachers are going to make you listen to. These are the textbook minimalists. So in terms of music education, this establishes that there are clear styles and aesthetics emerging. Scholars, historians, and music enthusiasts begin categorizing and identifying key figures. This in turn creates the framework from which pedagogical approaches are developed. So the framework informs approach. Approach dictates pedagogy. Pedagogy constitutes relevance. Relevance is the metric for importance, impact, and significance. And significance is, yeah, it's as arbitrary and stupid as it sounds.
Part 4. The Passover.
So where's our boy Julius in all of this? Well, with titles like Crazy N-Word, Dirty N-Word, Evil N-Word, N-Word F-Slur, and Gay Gorilla, I'm allowed to say that one. It's not exactly shocking that Eastman's pieces aren't programmed in your average college recital. I mean, I get it. Edgelord contemporary classical music doesn't always pull the same crowds as, say, the incredibly complex 4 minutes and 33 seconds. There's no room for your noisy racket when we've got the lush harmonies of Penderecki. And of course, we only want the rich bel canto operatic stylings of Luciani Berio. I digress. Let's take a look at some of these composers that are required listening to get a composition degree. So we have these composers that have been cemented into the canon, but one has been conveniently left out? Why was he left out? Was it because Julius Eastman pioneered the fusion of pop harmony with a minimalist aesthetic? Which he did. No, that's not why. Was it because he innovated a new notation system that led to some of the most powerful uses of aleatoric structured improvisation ever written? Which he did. No, it wasn't that. Was it because he performed an entire program of original works for his graduate piano recital at one of the most prestigious conservatories in the world? No, that's not it either. It was because he was gay and black. Now, to be fair, classical music has made space for composers who are either gay or black. It's okay to be gay. It's okay to be black. But you
Can't be both.
You can't be gay and black and be unapologetic about it. You can't be gay and black and command the stage in leather chaps drinking scotch at 10 o'clock in the morning. You can't be gay and black and make your presence the undeniable center of gravity in a space that, frankly, wasn't really built for you. This is why Gay Gorilla and Feminine aren't in your music history books. This is why Julius Eastman's name doesn't echo through the halls of academia like Glass, Reich, or Riley. And just to be clear, this isn't oversight. This is erasure. Even among the avant-garde discourse, Eastman was too much, too radical, too explicit, too confrontational. Even John Cage, who, let's be honest, was no stranger to pushing boundaries, was furious when Eastman used his songbook's performance to talk about sex and undress another man on stage. John Cage, a gay man publicly scolding another gay man for being too gay. That's like next level self-hatred.
Julius died of mental stress causing physical deterioration. Racism within the classical world prevented him from doing the things he was doing. The system was rigged against him. It's the same old Scott Joplin, Charlie Parker story, only with a different person. Julius is just another in the line of black geniuses who get squashed in this particular hemisphere.
The thing is, Eastman wasn't an obscure artist working in a vacuum. He was celebrated in his time. He worked with Pierre Boulez, he worked with Lucas Foss, and he worked with some of the most respected musicians in this era. I mean, the dude was invited to give a lecture at Princeton while he was homeless. His music was performed across Europe and the United States. He was a known and respected figure in avant-garde circles at the time that he was alive. But the discussion surrounding those circles, the mythos of the shrouded intellectual experimentalist, I can't think of anybody with more imagination and originality than Eastman. Fortunately, in 2025, we're lucky that we're living in a bit of a progressive boom. There's been a bit of a revival of Eastman's music. Schirmer has actually taken Eastman on as a client and is now publishing his work. And thanks to the dedication of a few individuals, Julius Eastman has started to make his place in the pantheon of the revered. But as a whole, I believe the oversight and omission of Eastman is indicative of a broken system of education that needs to be reworked, rewired, and restructured. The fact that we've gotten a revival of his music is because he's gay and black, which is the same reason that he was passed over in the first place. I'm all for what affirmative action can do, but it kind of saddens me that it's required. I like to think that Julius Eastman's music should be celebrated for what it is, great fucking music. The fact that his identity is so enmeshed in his work signals that there just wasn't really a space for him in his music. Because classical music was never meant for someone like him. Because the framework that decides
Importance.
was built and propagated long before he got there. Because gatekeeping doesn't always look like banning someone outright. It usually looks more like making sure their name never makes it into the syllabus.